Today, we are going to be talking about how to turn influence into a business. My name is Amy Frankham. I am the contributing editor at Vogue Business, where I cover brands and CEOs that are the future of fashion, beauty, and the creator economy. So I could not be in better company. So I've been reporting on the creator economy since 2019, so pre-TikTok. So there's been a lot of changes that I have personally noticed, but I think the main thing that I have personally seen in my reporting is that influence is no longer the end goal, it's the starting point. I think that historically, creators like yourself might have thought about, I want to grow a following and then I'm going to get a brand deal. And I think now that mindset has shifted to, I'm going to grow an audience and then I'm going to launch a product. I'm going to build a business. I'm going to hire a team. I am going to run a multi-channel revenue stream. And I think that a lot of this idea of making content has shifted into really seeing yourself as a modern media founder, which as a creator, you all are. And I also have noticed that, it's less about going viral and really about building an audience and something durable that is going to last. Having said all that, that sounds like a lot of work for one person. So we'll also be exploring how technology and AI can really help modern creators scale and build the things that they want to build. So I have got the best team ever to talk about this with. So first up, we have got Danielle and Bridget Filong. And something I was asking them in the green room, which I thought would be fun also to ask here, is how do people tell you apart? Is there like little signs? Like I'm sure your friends can tell the difference.
Yeah, there's
right?
signs. It's our most asked question. What did you do? No, but what were you gonna say? I was just saying it's our most asked question. I don't know. I mean, think that once you get to know us, you really realize that you understand our personalities, and then you know
I think
the
it's
difference.
less about like the little things that are physical, more about our personality. Honestly, I wish I had a better answer. I wish I did.
Well, amazing. So most of you guys know them as the New York-based twin sisters. I'm sure you've seen them all over your TikTok and your Instagram page. I know I have. Every time I hear Grimes Genesis, I think of you guys. But they have collectively 1.5 million followers on Instagram, 2.1 million followers on TikTok. They've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, including Tory Burch, Michael Kors. And excitingly, last year, they launched their first venture together, Fifi. And then next, we have Olomide Olowe, who is exactly. She is the founder and CEO Topicals, which I would say is probably the most talked about beauty business in the last few years. I'm sure most of you have tried her absolute cult products, but her eye masks alone have sold 6 million units. And Topicals is one of the fastest growing skincare brands in Sephora. And Olomide herself is one of the most impressive individuals. She raised 15 million in venture funding by the age of 26. And then next, we have Jackie Aina, who almost does not need an introduction because she is the absolute OG and is probably one of the most recognizable voices in beauty today. Since she founded her YouTube in 2009, she has grown a following of over 10 million globally. She has also worked with some of the biggest beauty brands in the world, including e.l.f. Cosmetics, Too Faced, but excitingly, has also launched her own brand in 2020, Forever Mode, to a waitlist of 45,000 consumers. Let me give it up for the panelists. So I thought to begin, all of you have very different perspectives and ways into this industry. And I thought maybe Jackie, just because you have been doing this the longest, and you've really seen the trajectory of influence going from something that people just built an audience to then getting a brand deal to then maybe thinking about launching their own product and scaling it into these globally recognized brands. What to you has been the the biggest change? And importantly, what has also stayed the same throughout this time period?
This is my 17th year as a creator, and I feel like what everybody now has the advantage of is like they know, okay, if I put in the effort, if I have a unique point of view, if I at least have good content, like if for the most part, if you check all the boxes, you can actually make a career out of this. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be guaranteed, but like 17 years ago, I did not have that hindsight. I was literally just talking to a camcorder, and it was low key kind of giving psych ward, like straight jacket activities. It's like, who are you talking to? What are you doing, and why are you doing it? Like, why don't you have a job? Like, it was very sketchy. But now, like, people have the hindsight of knowing, like, oh, like I can actually do something with this, which I think is incredible. And I would like to think that like OGs have kind of like laid that groundwork to make that possible, which is what I would want to do anyway. Like I wouldn't want someone to take as long as I did to get to what I built now, which is, like a really good thing. And then what was your second question?
And yeah, I just wanted to know what's changed and what has remained the same.
People are crazier online. Like there's a lot of chaos online. Like it can be a lot. But again, I think you have the hindsight now of knowing that you're getting into that, whereas like when I started I didn't. So that's one thing. I think we generally know we can utilize our platforms as leverage, which is a good thing. I think there was definitely a time period where people didn't know if they can do something outside of the platform, outside of being a creator. Creators are now businesses in their own right, which is such an amazing thing. I think one of the best things that still remain consistent is that this is a woman-dominated industry. We ain't really got much else right now. So like this is the one thing that I want us to keep our death grip on, because we're leading people, we're influencing, and I want to continue to hopefully see more of that going forward.
I agree.
I have something to add.
Please.
I've been consuming content for so long, like watching your content growing up, and I feel like one thing that's changed so much is it's become way more personal. I think the consumers expect so much too from the creators, and they really want to feel seen, and they really want to get that authentic personal relationship with the creator. So just giving as much as possible to your community, I feel like is something that I've seen changed over the years.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I feel like you guys have been influencers and made that transition into a founder relatively recent. And I've seen you recommend so many brands online. And I'm curious, what has to be the biggest mind shift to you from recommending a brand to actually launching your own products and building your own brand?
Yeah. Well, we're still, of course, like recommending and promoting brands. I think that's such a big part of our business as influencers. And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you wouldn't expect and you wouldn't see in your typical brand partnership. And it's these little decisions, big decisions, like every single decision matters, whether it's how much inventory you should be ordering or what manufacturers to work with, working with tight production timelines. There's so many decisions, and all of these matter so much when it's your brand versus just working with a brand partner on a brand deal or a partnership. And I think that this has like really, really opened our eyes. We have so much respect for brands that we work with because we're like, wow, you want to work with us? Like now that we have a brand, And we also just have a whole different perspective on the industry. We are such thoughtful creators now that we are also brand partners and we're able to see both sides. So yeah, we're learning something new every single day.
I was just gonna say that. The twin telepathy is crazy. We literally learn something new every single day running this business. It's truly insane. Very well said.
I love that. And then Olamide, I think you have quite an interesting perspective here because you grew a following from being a founder. You didn't grow an audience and then transition that into a business. But I would really like to speak specifically to Topicals and how you run your social media, your brand activations, because one thing I've really noticed is that you have this amazing community around you and you do all these amazing events and moments, like allowing a creator who commented on an Instagram post to come on a brand trip and your fight nights. And I'm curious what your thinking is behind that and why sometimes the most memorable brand moments have nothing really to do with selling a product.
Yeah, I've always thought community business was my why. So I didn't start the business because we wanted to make the most money. I started the business because I wanted to give my community access to spaces that they've never been in. And so because I've started from that point, every decision we've made has been about how do we bring the community in, right? A lot of the opportunities in beauty pre-topicals were very exclusionary. And so we said at every point and every turn, how can we make something that people think is exclusionary, a brand trip, for example, how do we turn it on its head and bring, people who had never been on a brand trip before, right? How do you go to a location like Ghana in Africa, which is a place no one had done a brand trip to? How do you turn these places and these people who haven't been included, how do you turn that into what's cool and what's sought after? And so because I operate from the principles of community business, every decision we make is about how our community can be reflected back in the brand.
I want to build upon something that you two said, but direct this to you, Jackie, because when you are doing a brand deal, you're getting the money regardless of how it performs online. But when you are launching your own business and investing into your own products to then, give out to the world, there's not necessarily a guarantee that it will work. There is an element of risk. And when you launched Forever Mode, you did it with no outside backing. You self-funded it, which feels like a very risky, gutsy move to make. And I'm curious if you have any advice for anybody sitting here who is also wanting to make that next step and isn't sure about the risk and how much they're willing to take on.
The first thing that I would say is there's absolutely no reward without risk. So you can't go into anything expecting an ROI. It just simply doesn't work that way. But when I started Forever Mood, first and foremost, it was a brand that my community didn't expect because I was known for makeup. And here I was making candles. And people were like, girl, what the hell are you doing? But I was just like, woo, this is what I want to do. So I honestly, like, that was really the first time I bet on my own passion and didn't necessarily just do something that was expected of me. That was a risk in itself. And then also, like, me and my husband, my co-founder, like, we put up our own capital. So that's the biggest risk one can take. And I think that's what made it more valuable to the community is like, what better way to bet on yourself than like using your own capital, doing a product category that people don't expect. But I really went into that understanding that if this fails, I have to be okay with that. You know what I mean? And also, I think when you're like, we mentioned this earlier, but creators are businesses too. And you, hopefully by now, for those of you guys that are creators, you know that like every piece of content is not going to automatically warrant a brand deal. Everything is not always going to go viral. Things are not always going to be, an immediate hit. Sometimes things flop. And I think that you get kind of used to that push pull of like, sometimes things do well, sometimes they don't, and like being okay with that. So my relationship to like failure and like flopping over time, because I've been a creator for so long, has improved, I guess. Like my relationship to like what success feels like has definitely changed and evolved. And so, yeah, like I started this brand understanding that if it doesn't do good, or if it's not received well, it is still something that I just want to do. And it's still a product category that I genuinely enjoy. And I was okay with that. So that would be my advice, is just try, if any of you guys out in the audience are attempting to start a brand, or you are a brand right now currently, to change your relationship to what failure looks like. Because in business, nothing really is failure anymore. Like, I don't know, like you can always learn something. You can always take an opportunity and flip it into something else.
I actually want to talk about flopping. I want to talk about flopping.
Let's talk about it.
Because I think you are so right. So Topicals is the first brand that I launched, but I acquired a hair care brand last year called Bread Beauty Supply. And it was a brand that was in the market for textured hair care. And I acquired it because I saw a lot of potential in it that hadn't been realized. And I went on TikTok about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I think people see me and they see Topicals and they feel like we haven't made any mistakes. Everything's been perfect. I've been the smartest CEO that anyone could work with. And I transparently went online and told people that the first launch under my leadership flopped. And I think it's so important what you just said. And it's something that I feel like has been a theme that has been helping me in this new version of myself. It's really easy when you've had a lot of success to forget what failure feels like and to be like scared of that. But I think you have to fail. And
I
you have to
agree.
fail on the largest stages, because when you fail on the largest stages, your ego dies. And when your ego dies, you can do anything. And I think for me with bread, I feel so confident in rebuilding it now, where before I was so scared. I was like, I'm taking over this thing. What if it's not as good as topicals? What if people think I'm like not good at my job anymore? And like doing that video, talking to friends like Jackie, like it just has made me realize that like being in your flop era is kind of cute. It's kind of cute. You kind of get to figure yourself out again. So I really love that you touched on failure. And as someone who's really paved the way for us, like it's good to know that like back then you were thinking about who cares if I fail, and you're still thinking about that now.
Because if at the end of the day, like you flopping is still out eating somebody somewhere, no shade.
Yeah.
Like somebody is really,
Real,
somebody may
real.
see you in your head. Like sometimes we're our own worst critics. Like you're like, oh my God, I really flop. But there's actually probably like a 21-year-old college grad that's like, wow, like I can't believe you even tried. The fact that you even tried. Some people are too scared to even try, girl. Like
Yeah.
just the fact that we do things and give ourselves the opportunity to flop, especially as Nigerians.
Yeah.
We don't often get room to
Yeah.
fail at things. So I think that that is absolutely setting the standard for a new generation of people in general that have never really been given room to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
My favorite phrase right now is they don't build statues of critics. Like
Say it again.
they
What was-
don't build statues of critics. They build statues of people who
Damn.
actually do the work, not the people who are critiquing you. Like I think critique and feedback is so welcome and it's so good, but they don't build statues of the people who like don't post. You know what I mean? Like you guys had to like get up every day,
That's
post your
true.
content, be strategic. People who don't post, people who don't end up going after their dreams, like it's
They
yeah.
hate
So I
that.
can't let that affect how I think about myself.
Yeah.
I think this is compounded by the fact that you are all building in public. And I think that this idea of flopping, it's feels more high stakes when there's an audience watching. But what I really liked is that in that video, you had no ego. You asked for help. You asked why what isn't resonating with you. And that is such an asset to have that knowledge. And I'm curious, what made you feel like that was something that you should do? And also to the twins as well, because you've also recently launched Fifi and you've done that in public. And I think you've taken quite an interesting route into that. So I'd love to hear about your experiences building in public.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you guys were telling us back there about like the fit and size and how that's like how the feedback from people has like shaped your brands. I'd love to like learn more about your experience.
When we created Fifi, shout out, we created it to really live within our life and like these big life moments that happen. I don't know if anyone happened to follow along on my bachelorette. It was quite publicized. Florida husband. And we did something really interesting. We really wanted to involve Fifi and make it feel like really organic. We wanted all the girls to just, including Danielle and I, to organically wear these pieces and not feel like we're pushing product links or promoting saying this is launching in 2 weeks. Like we really wanted people to discover it on their own, just the same way they were discovering the entire trip, honestly. And I feel like what worked so well with that was like the intrigue of it all. Like people, it resonates with people for them to discover something on their own and feel like they're picking up
When
on
you
the
already have a
breadcrumbs.
platform.
What?
Like when you already have a platform.
Right, yeah, yeah. We almost had this built-in customer base in a way just because we started as creators. And I feel like really making sure that they're always kept in mind and building this business alongside them is everything. And it's really been part of the reason why I feel like we've been able to have so much success like so early on. And back to your question before, just like overall listening to our customers, seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we're not afraid to start over and change if we have to. And I think that's just part of it, like really listening and not just like pushing things to the side. Like that doesn't work as a brand owner.
Right.
And also addressing mistakes. Like, you know, building, like you said, like trying. And even if you fail, like that's so much better than not trying at all. And if there's a mistake, you know, think of it, address it, and just make it be better next time because of it.
I couldn't agree more. And then I also wanted to ask, because I'm listening to this and just thinking to myself, how do you guys literally have the time to do all of this? And I know, Olamide, that you are a user of AI and you integrate it in a lot of your processes behind the scenes that people might not necessarily see. And I was wondering if you could share sort of how you first started using it and what the best use cases for your business have been.
Yeah, I use Microsoft's Copilot a lot, and I really like it because it's more conversational and more almost human than other types of AI. And for me, I sit on the creative, product, marketing, people side. And a lot of times, as a successful business owner, you need to figure out how to make all of those things work together, right? It's not about, okay, I have a good product, or I have a good team, or I have good marketing. All of the things have to be in sync because it's hard to own a brand today. Like you have to be constantly interesting or coming out with newness for people to pay attention to you because there's just so many things going on. And so for me, I love using Copilot to think through the different decisions, right? Like if I put in my org chart into Copilot and I say, I have a designer that's really good at this, I have a marketer whose expertise is here, we're launching this product, and this is my marketing idea. I think AI isn't necessarily going to output creative that you're going to use, but what it's going to do is it's going to organize all the people into, okay, this person should work on this so that by the time you're ready to launch the product, copywriting is done or design work is done. And I think one of the things about me that I don't think people know, but I'm extremely type B, like extremely,
Same.
extremely.
That's
type B.
impressive.
Really not great when you're trying to.
You would not think that.
To do this job, that's impressive.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Like I feel like I'm always hanging on by a string. I'm not organized at all. Like all my business partners, everyone I work with knows that they have to like build around me. But AI has made me like really organized, and sometimes so much that the team is like, "What happened to you? Like, how did you?" And the thing is like a deck that might take me 2 hours takes me 30 minutes with edits through Copilot. And I think it's just about shaving off time. I'm someone who's always tinkering with different industries. Again, like I said, I acquired a hair care brand. I'm thinking about launching some other stuff. But I couldn't do it without like Copilot and it creating the framework for me to be able to be creative.
Same with you guys. Is it something that you've managed to integrate, especially if you've been building Fifi?
Yeah, I think definitely we utilize it to scale a lot as such a helpful tool. And also, you were talking about decks. We literally make a PowerPoint for everything. Like, we have an idea, and I'm like, okay, PowerPoint. And this is not like just a PowerPoint. This is a very in-depth PowerPoint that we will use like to really bring an idea to life. And I think it's just been an amazing way to really grow and scale our business. It's just one of the many ways that we really use. Anything to add? Oh, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I was gonna say
We would
decks
be
are like the
nothing
best
without,
thing.
yeah. We would,
Decks are the best thing that come out of Copilot.
yeah. We would be nothing without modern technology. And I
Yeah.
feel like also really excited about the future of it. There's so much ahead with the future.
I am definitely very bullish on it for deck use and things like that. But are there anything that you're like, it's something I wouldn't use it for? Because I think there are so many interesting use cases, but I also would want to know if there's anything that you're like, I won't outsource this to AI, and I would rather get AI to, cut back on all the time I'm spent elsewhere so I can really give my time to this one thing that needs that human touch.
I actually have an answer for this one.
Please.
Probably like naming products because our brand is so focused on storytelling and its fragrance, and a lot of what draws our community in online who maybe don't live near a retailer where they can smell the product is the name or how I describe it. The storytelling, like it's so important. And I just don't think AI could replicate that. Like it's just not going to eat the same. Like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
just doesn't have the same colloquialisms and language and jest, I guess, that I could give. So that's probably one of them for me.
Yeah, I think like the overall creative aspect of all of it, everything that goes into building a brand, like we're all creative, and that's why we're sitting here right now. And Yusuf yesterday, the CMO of Microsoft, he was doing a panel right here, and he said that AI never had to take a driver's test and feel nervous or ask a girl out on a date. So I feel like there's those like intuition and those feelings and the curiosity and just of overall creativity that AI does not have. So it's such a powerful tool, but that's exactly what we use it for, as a tool, and we don't depend on it for creativity and building a brand overall.
For sure, I couldn't agree more. And then it's something in my life that I've really discovered and have been using, but I love the power of no. And I was saying backstage with you guys that you all see the things that they say yes to. You see the wins, you see these really excitement announcements, but you don't necessarily see the things that you say no to. And actually, some of the most successful people I know are that way because they know when to say no. And because, you know, you're not sharing these things, I was wondering if any of you have anything that is an interesting story or time that you said no to something and why it was so important and it actually did help long term.
I'm so bad at saying no, as y'all can see by with all the projects I keep taking on. But I will say one of the things that's helped is within my brands, there's a lot we say no to. Like me as an entrepreneur, I might say yes to projects, but like we are so strict with our brand book. So like who the brand is for, what we will and will not do is what we're really strict on. And I think it's really helped us carve out our lane. And I think right now brands actually need to be niche. Like you need to be for a specific customer who, in you guys' cases, right, like dresses a specific way or wants to smell a specific way. I think there's so many brands out there that if you try to be for everyone, you literally are for no one.
So true, so well said. We always talk at the same time. I think that, yeah, like you said, there's such a power in saying no. Sometimes saying no to something, even if it's hard to, like helps you manifest something bigger and better. And I feel like I don't have specific instances to name today, but like that has definitely happened to me so many times in my career, especially with specific brand deals, even though they like put them on a silver platter with, you know, making it seem very appealing. I really think saying no and making sure you're only saying yes to things that feel true to you and keeping your audience's trust in mind with every decision you make for what you're going to promote on this channel.
For sure. And then one thing that I want all of you to sort of think about, because to me, it does feel like the assumption today is that once you have a really large following, you have to start a business. You have, whether it's a brand or a course, I think everybody is looking at how to transition into the business side of creation. But what would you say from everything you have learned is something that people should not confuse between having influence and building a business?
I think personally, sometimes there's instances where I've seen creators take advantage of that. And so they assume that their name can translate to anything. And that's absolutely not how it works. And I actually think, to their credit, not necessarily to like diss anybody or to the detriment, but I think to their credit, not everybody has any business being a founder. Like it's okay to know that it's like it's not for everybody. We're not all built that way. Sometimes every day I'm like, can I actually do this? Like I ask myself this question actually as well. Thank God I have a co-founder. But it's not necessarily the natural transition that I think everybody expect, and that's okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It does not mean you can't usher your talents to other things, but it is tremendously a completely different landscape. Even though, yes, being a creator is a business too, it's two totally different hats. And I had the hindsight before starting Forever Mood. I'd collab with brands, so I knew I could sell product. I saw what I did with Too Faced. I saw what I did with Anastasia Beverly Hills. But then I started a brand and I'm like, oh, they have like a whole global machine behind them. I don't. It's very different. So you learn as you go. And also, a brand is not just an idea. It's not just a one-off thing. How do you maintain? How do you sustain? After you cash in on that initial idea, then what? Those are all things that you have to think about. And then when you start hiring people, I'm now responsible for their livelihoods. Are you willing to take on that risk? If the answer is no, that's okay. Like that is absolutely okay, but it's not for everyone. And you know, it's just the truth. It's just the truth.
Yeah, I have nothing more to say but what she said, which is don't do it if you know that you can't get up 10 times and then get up again. I literally have the same thing every day. I'm like, I should just pack it up and just go sit down somewhere. Like,
Exactly.
it's too much work. And then I have to like call a friend, I have to talk to someone, and then people are like, don't like come down, it's okay. Like it's okay. But it's really, really hard. I don't think
It
enough
is
people
hard.
talk about how hard it actually is. Like it's fun, it's fulfilling, but it is going to test you in ways that you didn't know you could be tested.
And even if you do have the passion to do it and you want to do it, sustaining it is like a whole nother thing. We say there's like 3 things that
Exactly.
keep a business going after the excitement dies down, but your passion, work ethic, and structure. We say passion.
real.
And support.
Yeah, of course. But if you could
support.
only pick 3. If you could
Oh
only
yeah.
no, but that's true. Support is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
none of us could do any of this without our teams, you know? But then it's like, okay, building a team is challenging, but I personally think that the reward is so worth it. It's so fulfilling and it's so exciting to see happy customers.
And how do you think, I like what you said about sustaining, because I think we've also seen that there are a lot more creators nowadays and there's a lot shorter hype cycles and people can really come and go within 2 years. And I think there's not enough said about really, as you said, sustaining and longevity and being able to still, like Jackie, have a career like 17 years down the line in this same space and one that has grown and evolved as it even bigger. How do you all think about sustaining and longevity when it comes to influence?
I would say implementing structure like anything else. You treat it like a regular business, you know? You need to have the right team around you and the right structure in place to scale anything, whether that's being a creator or having a business. And staying on top of trends.
I think my biggest advice is not being afraid to fail, but we already covered that. And not being afraid to try something new. Like I would never, especially when you're joining like a new platform, I would never look down on like the new generation of creators thinking that I ain't got nothing to learn from them. No, absolutely. Like take notes. Like always be willing to learn, always be willing to try something new. And you may end up hating it, but that's okay. At least you tried it. Like
At least you tried.
at least you tried. Like never be too big or above doing what's new or evolving or being like, actually, I don't think this is resonating with my audience anymore. And so I think that's probably my biggest testament is like losing the ego and not being afraid to like fail out loud, try something new and like not learn something.
Even the transition from like YouTube to TikTok was huge.
Completely.
Yeah.
There's people, there's like, I was in Pottery Barn and these kids were like, I follow you on TikTok. I was like, what in the hell are you doing watching my TikToks? But I didn't say that to them, but I was just kind of like gagged. Like, I did not come from that era. Like, YouTube was very adultish. And now, like, the kids are learning about home decor. I'm like, okay, all right. Like, but yeah, it's a completely different audience. There's some people who didn't even know I was on YouTube, like, had no idea, which is strange. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It's very weird. But, you know, just being open to jumping on something new. If that's where people are and they're saying like, we love you here, come on here, then yeah, like I'll try it out and see what it's all about.
Thank you so much. That's all we have time for today. Please give it up for my amazing panelists. And I hope one thing that I really took away from the talk with Mel Robbins last night is that AI can give you all these ideas, but you need to have the courage just to do the thing. And I hope that you've heard something here today that might make it a bit easier to take that leap. And hopefully one day I'll write about your business in Vogue Business. Woo!
Love to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.